Well, it's good to see all of you. Thanks for having me in the bridge. My name's John, if you don't know me. I am the high school pastor here. And as Nathan said, I've done a couple different things at the church. And I just want to encourage you, it is really good that you're here in the bridge. I know that I'm a visitor here, and if you're a regular here, you already probably know that. But just want to encourage you how good it is to be surrounded by a lot of people who are committed to Christ like you are. If you're a person who's a Christian, there's no better place for you to be or to connect with than the bridge, because this is where God has you right now. And I saw a lot of pictures online. I was just looking at the bridge, trying to understand who you guys were. And I saw this picture. It's you guys are up there in Ventura having a great time. It's really good you guys have Nathan, who is your leader here in this ministry. And I just want to tell you, it's a privilege to be here with you. And it's a privilege, I think, for you guys to recognize the group that you're in. And I noticed on Instagram, and I saw that people were doing the 2016 challenge, and I was actually in this ministry in 2016. I found a picture as I was looking for pictures. That was a group of interns in the summer of 2016. That was us. So I think right over there. We changed the color of the slats there. You can kind of see, but yep, I was here in the bridge. It wasn't called the bridge. It's called Third Nine. It's like the third nine of your life. That's right. Francesca knows. She was there too. I should have got a picture of Francesca. I did not get a picture of Francesca. I did find a picture of my wife, and we didn't meet in the bridge, but we were in the bridge together. We met a little bit before that, but we did not start dating until we were about the age of the bridge, which is exciting. And a lot happens in 10 years. I mean, the 10-year challenge, this is what's happened to me in the last 10 years. A lot of kids, that happens when you get married. It can happen. It can happen. That's not the sermon tonight, but that can happen when you get married. And if you saw that last photo, that's if you know Abby Lopez there, a lot has happened for her too in the last 10 years. And it's really cool to see people who used to go to the church 10 years ago and are still here at the church. And there's a multiplication process. A lot of new kids at this church because of what happens in the bridge. And as I was looking at the people in the bridge, I wanted to imagine, what could happen in the next 10 years? I mean, if there has been multiplication in the past, I just think there might be multiplication in the future. So ChatGPT is a great tool if you ever want to see. If you get lonely sometimes and you say, what can my future wife look like? Well, here's what Austin and his family is going to look like. I thought that was pretty cool. Look at that little boy. Look at that. Look at this brother. Look, I'm just going to circle his face real quick just because I can. Do you see this guy? That is Austin. That's pretty good. Yeah. Well, is he even here tonight? Where is Austin? Oh, there he is. He's hiding. Is RJ here? Where's RJ? Oh, my guy RJ. I have something to tell you. How cool is that? Look at her. Look at that baby. That's a really cute baby. Oh, man. You see that picture of Nathan Zalea? You didn't know who he's going to marry. I gave it the same prompt, give this person a fitting spouse. And this is what chat thought. So look at that boy. I mean, that is little Nathan. The children aspect is what kind of freaks me out. You saw that picture of Jules and Gracie. There's Jules. She's pregnant with her third, as you can see. That's pretty cool, too. Yeah, that boy, that kind of looks right. I think that looks pretty good. Do you want to see Gracie? Same photo, but there's Gracie. He has even more kids. Look at that guy. Where is he? When is he going to walk into the bridge? You know what I mean? That's exciting stuff. Yeah, there's one more. Where's Hunter at? Is Hunter? Oh. Well, we saved the best for last because that's what chat said. I don't know if you're seeing that, Hunter. Are you seeing that? Yeah, he just gave someone a high five. It was an easy prompt. I don't know. I don't know if that's possible there, but there you go. That's what chat said. So don't do that of yourself because it's not going to be good. Yeah. All these people are very fake. They're very fake. And as you look around, you're like, man, where are they in the bridge? You know what I mean? But what I want to talk about tonight, as Nathan asked me, was let's think about marriage, and let's think about dating, and let's think about what are the steps towards marriage, because it really is true. The most important thing that you will do in the next 10 years is decide who's my life partner going to be. Who's going to be the person who's going to be by my side? And thankfully, you all are in a situation where you have a choice about the matter, okay? Because that has not always been the case in history. Sometimes there has been very little choice that you have been able to exercise, and the choice is good and bad. Some of you are like, I wish it was just arranged. You know what I mean? Like, my parents picked somebody, then I wouldn't have to do the work of dating. Some of you are happy that's not the case, and you're happy you do have choice. But I do want you to think, before you get married, what is it that we need to know, okay? And what I put together for you was a little packet. And there's a lot in this packet. And I hope you all have one of these. If you don't have one of these, I'll stall for you. You can grab one in the back. But there's a ton of Bible verses in here. And the reason for that is, what I want to do is kind of show you, even before we talk about dating, what does the Bible say about this? Because the Bible doesn't say a ton about the process of getting married. It doesn't say a lot about the steps that are taken. And actually, in some ways, it's not a terrible thing. Because the Bible is so cross-cultural, it can apply to any culture, no matter what the steps that are taken in that culture are, so long as we say, I'm committed to aim at what the Bible says, right? And I think that's so important when it comes to marriage. Because I was trying to say this earlier, but other than your commitment to Christ, right, which I think is primary, because that points your whole life, your decision on who you marry, I think, is the second most important thing that will ever happen to you, okay? Who are you going to be 30 years from now is going to be largely dependent upon what you decide in this area, whether you decide to get married or stay single, what kind of a girl you decide to marry, what kind of a guy that you say yes to marriage. That will, in a very real sense, shape the person you are, shape the life that you have. So this is really, really important stuff. So I wanted to look at what the Bible has to say. So a lot of fill in the blanks. I'll try to go through this fast, but I gave this to you as a resource. All the verses are in there. We're not even going to read all these verses tonight, but I want you to be able to look back at this and say, okay, I know what the Bible says about this topic, okay? So first of all, if we're going to even talk about marriage, let's just get it down. Like, what is God's design, and what are the elements that are a part of marriage? Because even my presupposition that I'm starting with is the Bible is true and that God has designed marriage. Okay, that's, I guess, our first big idea here. It's the first point. God has a design for this. That's really important because when you get married, you start to move into territory that God has defined. Okay? That's a lot like discipleship or evangelism or any spiritual thing. If you're doing something that God made, and God made it in a particular way, you're like on His turf, not on your own turf. And that's super important because we don't get to define what marriage is, what marriage isn't. When someone enters into marriage, as I have seen happen many times at our church, like when people enter into marriage, if you weren't thinking too much about God, you have to start thinking about God in a lot of ways because His Bible has a lot to say about how husbands should treat their wives, how wives should treat their husbands, about biblical roles. There is so much to it. So when you get married, there's a shift that takes place. You really step on God's ground a little bit. So first of all, this probably goes without saying for most of you, but marriage is designed, first of all, to be between one man and one woman in one marriage, okay? And before you ask me a polygamy question, I would tell you, even in the Old Testament, when people were marrying multiple people, you understand that was multiple marriages. It was not having a thruple or a quadruple or whatever they call that with four of them, okay? So that's important, okay? So even in the Old Testament, when we see that like a man will marry three wives, which is not God's ideal design, as we'll see in these passages, even if that's the case in those other cultures, it's still like three marriages. It's not one big marriage. So we don't believe in polyamory. We certainly don't think polygamy is the original design, and it's disastrous if you read in the Bible when people do that. So a couple verses for you. The main one that just should serve as our starting point for what marriage is Genesis 2:24. It says, "Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." That is God's thesis statement about marriage right at the very beginning. And if you say, well, that's Old Testament stuff, Jesus never would have agreed with that. Well, actually, Jesus directly quotes that in Matthew 19. When questions about marriage arose, he goes back to the beginning, and he almost kind of dunks on the people who ask him. Like, dude, don't you know this? Don't you know that from the beginning it has been a certain way? And that's what he goes to. So, one man, one woman, one marriage, okay? Two men can't be married to each other. Two women cannot be married to each other. Three people cannot be married to each other. You can't be married to a chatbot. You can't be married to your dog. The world can say whatever it says about marriage, okay? Because at some point, your kids are going to come in and say, like, Dad, I'm in love with my chatbot. And you're going to say, back in my day, we only were in love with real people. Have you seen that? Like, you're like, that's not marriage, right? Totally, you're right. You're right, but you're only right because God said it, not because it's a preference. Because if marriage is just a preference, what's the problem with them doing whatever they want, right? But see, when you're on marriage territory, we're not just in our preference territory. We're talking about a God thing. So then we have to play by God's rules, okay? So, one marriage, one man, one woman for life, okay? Another thing that's clearly a part of marriage is a design by God for us to have companionship, okay? A couple verses here. I gave you 4. 2 from the beginning, Genesis 2:18. The whole purpose of marriage at the beginning and the creation of woman was because there was a lack. Not because things weren't good, right? Because even when God made them, there was good, but there was something that was missing. And what was missing was femaleness, okay? There was just maleness. And there was something missing. And God says, it is not good that man should be alone. And then everybody's like, yeah, totally. It's not good to be alone. It's not good that man be alone. Really not good for women to be alone. It's not good for humans to be alone, right? But then God says, I will make a helper fit for him, right? Even that language, like there's compatibility that's happening where a wife and a husband make up for what each other lacks, okay? That's huge. And a lot of it's companionship. Look what Adam says. When he first sees Eve, in verse 23, it says, then the man said, this at last is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. And she shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. And, the Bible joke is like, man, he was so excited because what gets presented to him? A naked woman was presented to him and he gets all excited, right? Because it's like, wow, this is so cool. Like, because they don't have clothes on at this point, right? I don't mean that as a crass thing. It's just like that. He was really excited because he's like, finally, not an elephant or a giraffe or a coyote, like that, whatever that is good, right? And I want to spend time with that person, okay? And he's excited. Okay. Ecclesiastes talks about enjoying life with your wife, right? Part of God's good gift is that in most cases, if people are married, there's 2 of you. You're not alone. And that's the good and the bad part of marriage, right? You're always next to each other. You're always with each other, which everyone thinks is so exciting until you realize, like, oh, yeah, you're always with each other, right? And there's good and there's bad to that. You know what marriage is? Just like eating and sleeping and eating and waking up and sleeping and eating and waking up and talking and talking and talking and buying things and spending money and then waking up and then going to bed and then waking up. Like and you're always there with them, right? So pick someone that you really like to do that with, right? That's companionship. And also look at Song of Solomon. It says, my beloved is mine, right? There's a possessiveness that's right? We want to be possessive of somebody else. But it's hard to be possessive of other people because we know, this person's friends with 10 people. I'd want them to just be my friend. Well, in marriage, there is the exclusivity that we desire of a relationship like that. So, for companionship. Also, marriage is designed to fulfill rightful sexual desires. I put the word rightful on purpose because I can't say biblically that marriage is designed to fulfill any and all sexual desires. There's plenty of sexual desires that are out of order or perverted or not in keeping with God's design that marriage will never fulfill, okay? So some examples of this. Proverbs 5, verse 15 to 20. A father tells his son, drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. Okay, he's not talking about water. You'll understand this as he keeps talking. He said, should your springs be scattered abroad? Streams of water in the streets? Right? Like your water, you want to take your water and dump it out on the street. No, not from your well. That's not good. Don't let it be for the streets, which I guess has carried over into the way we talk today, right? You understand what I'm saying? Okay, good, thanks. 17, it says, let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breast fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always in her love. Why should you be intoxicated, my son, with a forbidden woman and embrace the bosom of an adulteress? Okay? Maybe you didn't know the Bible said that, but that's what the Bible says. So there's some kind of rightful expression of sex that happens in marriage that he's saying here, like, you better make it good because this isn't for other people. This isn't for other people to know about. This isn't for other people to have an insight on. This is for you and that person, okay? And then 1 Corinthians 7, a New Testament thing here, the Corinthians were funny, if you know that book. They had all these claims, and there's a big translation debate in the book, like, where do the quotation marks belong? And look at this. Verse 1, he says, now concerning the matters about which you wrote, quote, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman, end quote. So they wrote that to Paul, okay? And he's like, let me respond to that. Because you could imagine, maybe that is right. Maybe it is better for a person not to have sex. And Paul says, well, but, verse 2, because of the temptation of sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. So there is something good about that possessiveness, and it's regular. Verse 3, the husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband. The husband does. And likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. And then he says in verse 5, you shouldn't even stop having sex. In fact, if you take a break from sex, it should be a short break. Look at verse 5. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps, like he's not even saying for sure, right? He's just saying maybe in a situation, by agreement, for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come back together again so that Satan might not tempt you because of your lack of self-control, okay? So this is one of the purposes and designs of marriage. So that's a good thing, okay? Next, part of this is the result of sex. Marriage is designed to produce children. It was the way that God wanted children to be brought into the world. Okay? There are plenty of ways that people may today bring children into the world that are not God's design. Okay? Plenty of ways. And with more technology, there's more ways to bring children into the world, but God's design, the intention, the good purpose was not that, a person has, whatever, like 6 baby mamas, okay? That's not God's design. Okay? Or even people who are not able to have children, like maybe let's just say 2 women who call themselves married to each other, can then go get a sperm donor and then get IVF and then give birth to a child that way. That's also outside of God's purpose and design, and it should be clear in the fact that it can't happen naturally. Okay? That should have been clear, but it's not to a lot of people. Okay? But marriage, part of the design is to produce children. A lot of verses for you here. Genesis 1 is the most important one. God created man and woman in his own image. Okay, that's what he does in verse 27. Verse 28, he blessed them. And he said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Okay, be fruitful and multiply is about having children. That's what's oftentimes called in theology the creation mandate. That's a command. So another odd thought here, maybe you haven't thought about this, but God's command for people in general is to have children. That is not God's suggestion. That is not God's idea if you want. That is God's command in general, but it is given in the context of a marriage. So I'm not going to say God's command for every single person is to be fruitful and multiply because it's not inside the design. But inside the design, that is God's command. We'll talk more about that later. Also, these other verses, Psalm 127, 128, they're all about how children are like this good blessing that comes from doing what God wants. Everyone who fears the Lord will be blessed, the one who walks in his ways. It talks about how your wife will be like a fruitful vine. So children are a blessing is basically what I'm trying to say with this point. Also, Malachi 2. He's telling them not to get divorced, basically. God's upset that people are... in Malachi, what's happening is you've got Israelite men who are divorcing their old Israelite wives for hotter, younger wives that are immoral, okay? And they worship other gods. And they're doing that because that's what people do, right? And he says, don't do that. Guard yourself in your spirit. Don't be like that, because think about when you got married, what happened? Verse 15. This is Malachi 2:15 on the sheet. Did he not make them one? Husband and wife, didn't God put you guys together with a portion of the Spirit in their union? And what was God seeking? Godly offspring. That's what God wanted. He says, so guard yourself in your spirit. So what did God want when he said, okay, husband and wife, you're together? What did he want? He wanted godly children. That was part of God's purpose and design there. So that's another thing that marriage is designed for biblically. Another thing, we learn this in the New Testament very clearly, marriage is designed to display Christ's love. In particular, a husband's love for his wife is meant to show the love that Jesus has for his people. Ephesians 5, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And at the end of the passage, he says this mystery is profound. Not mystery as in you can't understand it, but something that's hidden that's now revealed. That's what a mystery is in the New Testament. It's profound. It refers to Christ and the church. That was God's purpose. So it's not like an ironic joke that we come up with afterwards, okay? It's not like he looks at Christ and the church and he says, that reminds me of marriage. No. This is actually more profound than that. When God made marriage, the whole point was to show us the reality, which is God's love for his people. That's interesting. So the whole reason he lets us do marriage the way he does it is as a great picture of his care and his love for us. That's profound if you think about it. Okay, marriage also is designed to be a gift for most people. And I say most people, and this is, I think, debated today, but let me give you some scriptures here. I'll give you 5. 1 Corinthians 7, Proverbs 18, Jeremiah 29, 1 Timothy 4, and 1 Timothy 5. These passages basically say this: it is normal and expected that people would get married. And if you've ever studied our culture versus other cultures, you'll know that when there's heightened choice, people make more of the choice to not get married or to delay marriage. And there's a lot of reasons for that we could talk about. But some of you get, maybe, I don't want to guess what you're thinking, but maybe nod your heads at me if you ever thought this. I know back in the day, everyone got married, but what if I never get married, right? Maybe you don't have to do it so that your friends would see you, but as my dad says, raise your left eyebrow if you've ever felt that way, right? Everybody else will get married, but not me, okay? And you may have felt that before, right? I've said that before. I'm sure many of you have said that before. I'm just never going to get married, right? It's never going to happen for me, right? That's not true, because statistically, most of you will get married. In fact, statistically, most of you will get married relatively soon, in the next decade, statistically. Let's say 70% of you statistically will get married in the next 10 years, okay? So you probably will get married. Even if now you're I'm called to singleness. Almost everyone that I've ever met, and I met a lot of people who've said that, almost all of them have changed their mind. That's not to say that everybody should change their mind, right? But most do change their mind. So it is a gift for most people. And as we just said, 1 Corinthians 7, he says, but because of the temptation of sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. In other words, if you are tempted in the area of sexual immorality, that's a good sign that you should have a spouse. That's what he's getting at there. And then he says, I wish everyone was like me, but each has their own gift. The gift, to be single for a time, or for these people to get married. Another one, Jeremiah 29. That one's interesting, because if you know what that's about, God's telling the Israelites who are in captivity, live normal lives in Babylon. You got to just live the normal life. Build a house, plant a garden, get married, which is an odd thing. But it's in there, I think, for a purpose, and I think it teaches us something. That's the general expected pattern of life, that you will get married, that you will have children, and that those children will grow up and get married. That's probably what's going to happen for most of you. Let's just call it over 75% of you that will happen. Notice in 1 Timothy, who is it that forbids marriage and requires abstinence from certain foods that God created? It's the false teachers. So a sign of saying, no, you guys are not allowed to get married. Nobody gets married in this thing, right? That's a sign of a cult group, okay? That's not good. And he's saying that's bad. Also, 1 Timothy 5, very, very interesting. What does Paul say younger widows should do? Should they stay single for the rest of their life and honor their dead husband forever? No. Sorry, No, they shouldn't. They should get married again. Why? Because they've already crossed that threshold. You've already been married. It's really hard to be married and then not be married. So he's like, if they've been married and their husband dies, they should probably get remarried. Look what it says. So I would have younger widows marry, bear children, and manage their households, and give the adversary no occasion for slander. It's in the Bible. So another thing, if you say, what about if I don't get married? Well, marriage can be avoided for ministry reasons, but not for selfish reasons. And that's an important distinction. 1 Corinthians 7 and Matthew 19 talk about this. If the reason why you don't want to get married is because you don't want to deal with some dude, okay, that's a bad reason. Guys, if the reason you don't want to get married is because, like, you just don't want to put up with some girl telling you what to do, right? I mean, that's she probably shouldn't tell you what to do, but if you don't want to put up with some girl, that's a bad reason. That's called a selfish reason. So that's not a good reason not to get married. You know what is a good reason not to get married? These two things, Matthew 19 and 1 Corinthians 7. Paul says, look, if you can not right now for the sake of the gospel, then don't. But if this is going to be a real source of a problem for you, you should get married. It's better to get married because it's not a sin to get married. Jesus said to the disciples who were like, man, if we can't divorce our spouse, which is a super interesting passage, Matthew 19, the Pharisees like, hey, can we just dump our wives whenever we want to? And Jesus is like, no, from the beginning, you got to stay together. And then the disciples hear that and say, wow, if that's the case, like, who should even get married? This is just ironic if you think about what... That exchange is funny, right? Some of these guys were clearly teenagers because they didn't know, like, I don't know if I can do that, right? Peter was older, he was already married, but a lot of the disciples probably weren't married at this point. And they're like, I don't know if I want to do that. If getting divorced and remarried is adultery in God's eyes, then why would I even start that? And Jesus says to them, not everyone can receive this saying, but only those to whom it is given. There are eunuchs who have been so from birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let the one who's able to receive this, receive it. So marriage is to be avoided for some people, but why? For the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Or what Paul says, because of the present problems. And he says, I want people to have an undivided attention focused on the Lord. And yes, for some people, it is better not to be married, right? But that is a small minority. So if that doesn't apply to you, then I would encourage you to think about marriage and to prepare for marriage. So that's the first thing. What's God's design? What we just said. Secondly, what does God say we can't do in the realm of marriage? So that was all positive, like this is what God did it for, and this is the design. But what's the no-nos when it comes to the marriage topic? First one, probably the most obvious, is sexual immorality. Okay? The Greek word porneia, it encompasses a lot of different kinds of immorality. Sometimes it's translated fornication in older translations. Sometimes it's just translated sexual immorality in our sections. It can encompass adultery. It can encompass anything, basically, that is sexual, that is out of bounds of God's design. Right? So if two people in the bridge who are dating or not dating are having sex with each other, that's what would be classically called fornication, and that would be sexual immorality. Okay? If people who are married are including someone else in that marriage sexually, that would be sexual immorality. If people are married and then going outside of that marriage for sexual pleasure, you'd say that's usually called adultery, but it falls in this big category of sexual immorality. Homosexuality, bestiality, all those things would be included in sexual immorality. Okay? And here's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 6. Flee from sexual immorality. And he was talking to a bunch of people who lived in the city of Corinth and had to walk by the temple prostitutes. And in chapter 5, we learn about people who are joining themselves with the temple prostitutes, who are going to worship and then basically going to have sex with people in the temple. And he says, you can't do that. Right? We're Christians. We don't even own our bodies. Christ owns our bodies. He died for us. And what are you going to do? You're going to go hook up with some prostitute? You know, when you hook up with a prostitute, you're becoming one flesh with her. That's not right. That's not how God designed it. And then he says this, flee that. You were bought with a price. Glorify God in your body. Now, then he says in Hebrews 13, somebody says in Hebrews 13, let marriage be held in honor among all, right? So not just the married people, but the unmarried people, right? So it's your job as a Christian just to respect the marriages that are in your church or in your community. And let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. Okay? Super important. Then Proverbs 6 is a big, long display, and you could read into Proverbs 7. That's another good passage I should have put here, but you could just write down Proverbs 7, because that's a great description of all this, this young man who walks right into sexual immorality. So God clearly forbids sexual immorality, okay? What else does God forbid when it comes to marriage? Let me go quickly here. Divorce and abandonment, which are slightly different from each other, but let's talk about both, okay? God's word says no to either one of those for you as a Christian, unless the marriage covenant has already been broken, okay? Malachi 2, this is Old Testament, but he says, God's not accepting your offerings. Why not? Well, because God was witness between you and the wife of your youth, to whom you've been faithless, though she is your companion and your wife by covenant. And then the verse about godly offspring, guarding yourself. Then verse 16, he says, for the man who does not love his wife but divorces her, says the Lord, the God of Israel, covers his garment with violence, says the Lord of hosts. So guard yourselves in your spirit and don't become faithless, right? Most divorces start in the heart, just like most sins really start in the heart and then work their way out. So he says, guard yourself in your heart, that you're not thinking, oh man, wouldn't it be great if I wasn't married to this person? Wouldn't it be great if I was with them? Or wouldn't it be great if I was single again? It's like, that's the thing that he says, no. Say no on the inside to that. Then Matthew 19, this is the Pharisees asking this question that we talked about before. And then 1 Corinthians 7, because you might say, wait a minute. What if I'm a Christian and I'm married to a non-Christian and they don't want me to go to church? Wouldn't it be better for me? Wouldn't it be better if I wasn't married to this guy anymore because he proved to be a non-Christian? Wouldn't it be so much better? I could go to church. I could serve. I could do better in the church if I was just not married to this guy. See how that's a really spiritual sounding reason to get divorced? Look what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7. He says to the married, I give this charge, not I, Paul, but the Lord Jesus, really. The wife should not separate from her husband. But if she does, she should remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband. And the husband should not divorce his wife. To the rest, I say, I, not the Lord. So Jesus didn't say this in the Gospels, but Paul says this. If any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her, right? Unless the non-Christian walks out of the marriage, right? He says, then you're free. But no. You don't go walking out of a marriage if you're the Christian, even if they're a non-Christian. Super important. If a woman has a husband who's an unbeliever and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. Otherwise, your children even would be unclean. But as it is, they are holy. They're a part of this group because you guys at least have one Christian. But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. So in other words, you don't have to stay with a person who refuses to be with you. If they're going to walk away, okay, you're not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether or not you will save your husband? Or what do you know, husband, whether you'll save your wife? 1 Peter 3, same thing. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some don't obey the word, that they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. Okay. Notice that both of those two passages, 1 Corinthians 7 and 1 Peter 3, are all about a Christian and a non-Christian being married to each other. Okay? And when you hear that, you might say, whew, I'm glad I'm allowed to get married to a non-Christian if I'm a Christian. Oh, that's exciting to hear. Okay, got to give you another one that the scripture says very clearly, if you're a Christian, don't join up with someone who's not, okay? I'm going to call this spiritual incompatibility. Another thing that God says no to. The classic passage that you probably already have heard is 2 Corinthians 6, verse 14 and 15, where he says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Don't be hooked up in a marriage way, in a business way. Don't be hooked up in a way where you got to participate with them. If it's your choice, if you know, and this is where some people are like, man, it doesn't talk about marriage here. Okay. I think you also have to remember that so many of them had no choice in who they married. Just remember that, okay? So many of them had very little choice in who they got married to. So because of that, there's not a ton in the scriptures about that. There's a little bit in the end of 1 Corinthians 7. But he's basically saying, if you have the choice, don't like create an inseparable bond with somebody who's not a believer. Why? For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? What fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial? Or what portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? Right? What do you guys have in common? Okay, Nathan said this to you before, but I come to you today not as the high school pastor, okay, but as a pastor of our church, okay, because in high school ministry, we don't do a lot of this, okay? But in my time as a pastor of this church, dealing with a lot of the marriages in the church, and the divorces in the church, and the abandonments in the church, and the premarital counseling of the church, I can tell you a lot of people run right past this stop sign. I have seen it. I have met with people. I have pleaded with them not to get married, and they have, okay? And this is just a reality. Every pastor basically will experience this at some point, and it's like, man, the scriptures are so clear about this. And like with a lot of things, if you get a clear instruction from God's word and you decide to disobey it, you disobey it at your own peril, right? God will prove himself to be true. You obey what God says clearly, even though you don't agree, or even if you think, I don't even know if I have the faith to do this, but you just trust God and you obey God, God will prove himself good in that too, right? We got to take a lot of this by faith because we don't see it immediately. So that's New Testament. 3 Old Testament examples. Deuteronomy 7, when the new people of Israel came into the land, they came into this unrighteous land, God says, don't intermarry with them. This was not like a racial thing. This is a God thing. This is a religious thing. He says, don't intermarry with them, giving your daughters to their sons or taking their daughters for your sons, for they would turn your sons from following me to serve other gods. That is what God was interested in. So many times, if you look in the Old Testament, it's like, man, why is God like not okay with certain people getting married to each other? It's almost always this right here. There's one person in the marriage, one side of the family that's going to serve the idols or serve the Baals or pull people away from devotion to God. And God says, don't hook up in that way. Don't make that association because marriage is so significant. Once you join, you're not breaking, so don't join. Another example, right before this in biblical history, Numbers 25, 1 and 2, Israel was entering the land, but before they did, they went by the daughters of Moab, and it says these, the women, invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. Super big problem. God killed so many Israelites because they said, that's a really pretty girl. And they're like, maybe I should like follow their God. So just you think that that's impossible for you? It's not impossible for you. Oh man, he looked like the AI guy from Pastor John's thing, and like, it's a sign, I should marry him. He's not a Christian, but he's super nice, right? Don't, right? Or worse, right? If Hunter actually finds that girl somewhere in real life, like, if she doesn't love God, like, it's not worth it, bro. It's not worth it. If she loves God, you should definitely get to know her. But, yeah. Okay, Solomon. This is important. Solomon's really wise. Solomon's really cool. Solomon's really good. Solomon is called Jedediah because he's loved by the Lord. And then you know what Solomon does? He multiplies wives, breaking what Deuteronomy 17 clearly told kings they're not supposed to do. And it says, when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods. Right? Your heart could be turned away from God because you choose to love somebody else who does not love God more than God. That is a big danger. And I think, there's like 100 people in this room. It's very, very, very likely that someone or multiple of you will be tempted and justify this in some way. Don't justify it. Just, even if you don't agree with me, just take it by faith. This is what God's word says. Live by it, okay? Another thing that I think God would forbid is the idolatry of romance, okay? What does that mean? Well, romance is strong. Romance and passion is a really, really big deal. Some verses for you. I'd encourage you, maybe read these later, but some of us say, what I want most is romance, and I will do anything to get it. I want to get married now, so I'm gonna do anything at any means to make that happen. I would caution you to not put romance or a future spouse at the top, to make it priority 1. It should be like maybe priority 2 or 3 for you. Like definitely it's high, but don't make it above your relationship with God. Psalm 16 says, the sorrows of those who run after another God shall multiply. 1 John 5:21, little children, keep yourselves from idols. Well, my family can't be an idol. That's impossible. Well, look what Jesus says in Luke 14. If anyone comes after me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, and yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Right? God has to be first. Your relationship cannot be first. If you're willing to sin to keep your relationship, that should be a red flag in your mind that maybe this relationship is not honoring to God and glorifying to God. And then Matthew 6 is just about you can't serve two masters. That one's about money, but I think it can be applied to other people as well. So, okay, number 3. You saw it was a 12-page packet, so, I'm trying to go fast, but we got a lot to say about marriage, okay? Number 3, everybody asks, okay, now we're getting into the fun stuff, right? That's all like theology class over, okay? Now, sermon starts now. Everyone's like, hey, man, what should I do to get married? There's one piece of advice, and it is point number 3, become the right kind of person. That's my number 1 piece of advice, okay? There's other things that are included, but this is primary, that you would be the right person before you get married. Obviously, you'll change, you'll be sanctified, good things will happen too, but this is the best way to find a good spouse is to be the right kind of person. So some questions for you to consider for yourself. 1, are you really a follower of Christ? Because if you are, that's primary. If you are not a follower of Christ, I would encourage you, right, that maybe you're not ready to date, you're ready to become a follower of Christ, because that is more important. So don't take the sermon and say, hey, he said the most important thing is who you get married to, right? That's the second most important thing. The first most important thing is, do you actually obey Jesus? Do you do what he says? Have you laid down your life before God and said, I will do anything for you. I just need to share in the power of your resurrection, as Philippians 3, verse 11 says. If anyone will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. That is the primary and most important qualification for a good marriage. Okay, you can get married. That's not that hard, right? It's $61 at the Orange County Courthouse. You can go to the Laguna Hills the Laguna Hills, what's it called? The City Hall. That's where you get the marriage. Celeste knew, She said, I know where that is. Did you buy it there? Yeah, right. Best $61 Jose ever spent, right? Well, it's 81. Oh, dude. Gavin, man, he's just charging more, right? Wow. Getting old. It was $61 when I did it, not so much more. All right. Yes, are you a follower of Christ? That's first and foremost, okay? Because if not, and by the way, all these things, are you the right kind of person? Maybe when you, start to date somebody, maybe you should kind of read this back and think, okay, is the person I'm interested in, how would they answer these two? So this is, people talk about red flags, right? Or green flags or yellow flags. This is I'm trying to give you green flags here. So if you just invert them, that's pretty red. Some of them may be yellow, but this is red flag if not true, okay? Secondly, are you a person who genuinely fears God? I know that sounds random, why does that matter so much? Man, imagine you're a dad and you want your daughter to date somebody, okay? You're not there on all the dates, right? That'd be weird. You're saying, yes, you can date my daughter. But what would be really good to know? If that guy actually has a higher authority that he is submitted to. Because if I am the only authority that he's going to listen to, he will do whatever he wants insofar as he thinks I will not know about it, okay? This is why if you think about dating and marriage, and especially sexual immorality, fearing God is priority 1. Do I fear God? Does the person I'm trying to date, do they fear God? Is that obvious and evident? Because if it is, they're going to do the right thing whether people are looking or not. They're going to be the right kind of husband whether anyone checks up on them or not. They're going to be the right kind of wife, at least with the right aim and the right disposition, whether or not the girls in their women's Bible study small group when they're old and married rebuke them or not, okay? if they fear God. That is just so primary. Some verses for you here. Proverbs 3:7 says, do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Like, that's what I want to know, right? I have 4 kids. I got 2 daughters. They're really young. But like, hey, this would be the most, after, are they a follower of Christ? Second most important would be, oh man, if someone wants to date my daughter, I want to know, does that guy fear God? Because if he doesn't fear God, he's not going to treat her right. He's going to be super selfish. He's going to do whatever he wants to do, whatever he thinks he can get away with, and whatever he thinks she's going to be down for, okay? But if he fears God, that's going to restrain from evil because he won't be wise in his own eyes. At least he's going to try to do what God wants. Proverbs 10:27, the fear of the Lord prolongs life, but the years of the wicked are short. 19:23, the fear of the Lord leads to life. And whoever has it rests satisfied. He will not be visited by harm. Psalm 112, 1 and 2. Big statement, you'd be afraid to make it. I'd be afraid to make it, but the Bible makes it, so I'll read it. Psalm 112, 1 and 2. Praise the Lord. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who greatly delights in his commandments. His offspring will be mighty in the land. The generation of the upright will be blessed. His kids, if he fears God, his kids, they're going to be great in God's world. Good promise of Scripture. Now, thirdly, when you think about becoming the right person, I want to ask you, are you developing a reputation for honesty and trustworthiness? Because it'd be really good if the person who dates you can see that you are honest and trustworthy. What if your whole relationship is built on a lie? What if you lie at the beginning of your relationship and you just lie, like so many people do? Like, you think they're not going to find out? Or you think, like, maybe when you get married, you'll tell them the truth? Don't lie. Don't lie. If they're lying, red flag, okay? Ecclesiastes 7:1, a good name is better than precious ointment. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight. God loves those people. God's not very excited about lying lips. Are they honest? Are they trustworthy? Yeah. Okay. Fourthly, really important, especially in this day and age, are you avoiding or overcoming sexual sin or pornography? Okay. A couple passages for you. 1 Thessalonians 4:3-5 says, this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual immorality, and that each one of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor, not in the passions of lust like the Gentiles who do not know God. Right? So as you think about approaching dating or marriage, like, do you live like a Gentile who doesn't know God, who follows your lusts wherever they lead? Or are you learning to control, have self-control, and say no? Colossians 3:5, even stronger. Not just say no, he says, put to death, therefore, what's earthly in you. First thing, sexual immorality. Second thing, impurity. Third thing, passion. Guess what all those 3 are about? They're all about out-of-order sexual desire. That's where he starts. Like, what does it mean to overcome in the Christian life? That's a good place to start, okay? So, are we avoiding or overcoming sexual sin or pornography? Okay, that is so important. Statistically, it's something like 70% of American men are regularly watching pornography, and 30% of American women are regularly watching pornography. That's like across the board stats. Church stats are a little bit different. You might be surprised, in some areas actually higher. Actually, the way that the stats worked out was for men who attend church, it's actually a higher statistically that they're watching pornography, and women actually lower. Very interesting. Perhaps it's a greater level of honesty in the guys who are attending church that are claiming that this has been a problem, where in the world maybe some people just deny it. So the stats could be wrong. There might be other ways to read those stats, but that's basically the latest thing. Barna put that out, I think it was in 2023 is when they did that. So this is a problem. This is a problem in this room. I just know that for sure, not even knowing all your lives. I just know statistically this is a problem. And if you're watching pornography, just remember your whole view of sex is completely shaped by that and warped by that. And you're going to find that that's actually not what sex is like, okay? It's different than that. And if you build your expectations based on that, you're in a lot of trouble. You're in a world of reality check when you actually get married. So we need to be avoiding it, and we need to be overcoming it. Okay, that is a prerequisite to dating the right way, okay? Next, are you working hard so you can provide for a family? And you say, I thought this was just a boy thing. I thought that was a blue job. No, it's also a pink job, okay? 1 Timothy 5:8. If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever, okay? So, you want to marry a guy, but he says, I'm not going to provide, you're going to provide? Well, this just says he's worse than an unbeliever if he's unwilling to or isn't gonna, right? Not if he has a hard time or a financial issue, but he's going to work really hard. But this is like if I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to do that. He says, that's you're denying the faith. And then these next two are about a woman, Proverbs 31, 13-17, Proverbs 31, 27. You know what all those are about? A woman working really hard to provide for her family. Even going outside of her house, believe it or not, to go get things to collect for her family. Believe it or not, that's actually what it says. Okay, so some questions, particularly for the guys. 3 questions for the men in particular. 1, are you displaying qualities of leadership? Here's why I ask. Because these 3 passages are all about how men are supposed to lead, right? Let's just give an ideal situation. Some Christian man is going to give you his daughter to marry, and he's going to transfer the authority that he has over this daughter to you guys. He says, I've been a leader for this girl for the last 23 years. Now you're stepping in as the leader. Okay. Are you worthy of that? Is anybody going to feel good about doing that? Right? And if the answer is no way, okay, well then we're not ready for this. If it's like, yeah, no, this would be good, then good. Like that's what we're working towards, right? Is leadership. Ephesians 6, you know what your job's going to be, guys? To raise her children in the fear and instruction of God. So ladies, when you're choosing a husband, you're not just choosing based on his eyes. You're not just choosing based on his bank account. You're choosing how is this guy going to discipline and instruct my son and my daughter. That's what you're choosing too, right? I know that's not typically first date conversations, but like maybe 4th or 5th date, maybe we could start thinking about that, okay? 1 Timothy 3 is about qualifications for an elder, which, no matter what Twitter tells you, should be what every man in the church is striving for, okay? He must manage his household well, with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. That's what every man should be striving for in the church, okay? Are you displaying qualities of leadership? Not like, are you the boss of everybody right now, but like, are you starting to display this kind of leadership? That's a good start, okay? Another question for you guys, are you displaying patterns of self-control? 2 passages for that. Titus 2:6, after he tells all the girls, like, they need to be all these amazing qualities, he just gives the dudes one thing. He says, urge the younger men to be self-controlled, right? Because if they can do that, we'll figure out the rest, okay? Can they control themselves? Can they control their words? Can they control their sexual desire? Can they control their anger? Can they control, all those things? If yes, good sign. And then I gave you James 4, which says, what causes quarrels and fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? Right? So girls, you might not think this, but if you get married to a guy and he's, worth anything as a guy, you know what he's going to care about sometimes? Some things. And he's going to passionately, Jessica laughed at that one. Taylor's looking from across the room. Got a lot of married couples just like all over looking at each other. This is really fun. Seeing how the married couples are looking at each other. They're sitting in the back next to each other. That's good stuff over there. No, not, and Nathan moved, but I can't see. I got glasses on. What was I saying? You're going to, so if he's a good guy, he's going to have passions. He's going to care about some stuff, not everything, right? Some stuff he's going to be passive, and I don't care about that. You can take care of that. But so if you marry a good guy, he is going to have rightful ambition and passions. So what should he be starting to do even before he's getting married? Can he control? Does he know how to have self-control? Or is it like he's a whiny crybaby every time he doesn't get what he wants? Not good, okay? Men, another question for you. Are you displaying loving care for women in your life? Ephesians 5, twice, and then 1 Peter 3 say, this is a prerequisite to marriage. So how does he treat his mom, right? What do the women in the church think, about him? That's kind of a weird question. But I don't know, like, in the bridge, has he ever done anything nice for anybody? Has any girl, right? Don't get jealous, right? Don't feel like, no, you can't be nice to anybody, right? That's a really controlling, stupid thing, right? Because I think you're going to want him to be nice like your daughter and like your mom. There's all these women you're going to want him to be nice to. So you should want him to be nice to the women. Maybe not too nice, you know what I mean? Maybe not flirting with everybody, but you definitely want him to be displaying loving care. Okay? I know that because 1 Peter 3 says to husbands, likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life. Like Jesus saved them too, right? You're not the only one in this house that's saved, right? So that your prayers may not be hindered. God stops listening to husbands when they pray, when they don't treat their wives well. That's huge. That's a threat. That's one of the scariest threats, I think, in the whole Bible to married men right there. Okay, that's the guys. Ladies, questions for you, if you'll allow me to ask. Are you displaying and feeling, not just displaying, but are you displaying and feeling respect for the men that are in your life? Or are you a feminist? You're an anti-man? Right? You don't like men, okay? Well, I hate to break it to you, and I know I'm sarcastic, but I hate to break it to you, but you're entering a relationship where you're called to respect and love and honor a man. That's what marriage is. So you can't respect men, you're going to be a terrible wife, right? Or at least maybe you shouldn't even be a wife until you start learning, okay, I want to respect men in my life, right? Hopefully there's a couple men in your life that you can respect, right? I'm not saying respect every guy, because not every guy is worthy of respect, right? But do you want to? Do you desire it? Do you even see some of your friends, and it doesn't have to be romantic, but do you admire guys who are doing godly and good things? If it's nah, I hate that. Well, man, then marriage is going to be kind of rough for you. Even if he's a good guy, you might still hate him, right? So you got to be respecting. 1 Corinthians 11 says, do you not understand that the head of every man is Christ? So that's his boss, his authority. And the head of wife is her husband. Right? That's the authority. You're picking an authority figure. Right? You didn't get to pick your dad. Some of you got great dads. Some of you got mediocre dads. Some of you got bad dads. You didn't get to choose. But you do get to choose the dad for your kids. That's very, very important and amazing and really cool, but some pressure, right? No offense, but that's pressure. So, are you displaying and feeling some kind of respect? Another one, are you displaying what the Bible calls a quiet and gentle spirit? 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 to 6, I'll read it, just so you think I'm not making this up. Peter says, don't let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair, the putting on of gold jewelry, or the clothing that you wear. Right? Don't care so much about your clothes. That shouldn't be the main focus for you. But let your adorning be that of the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit that the Apostle Peter thinks is good. No. Which in God's sight is very precious. God really likes that. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves. That's what they cared about most, by submitting to their own husbands. As Sarah obeyed Abraham, she had to move when she was old. You remember that, in the Bible? She obeyed. She said yes. And she even called him Lord. Whoa, you start calling your husband Lord one day, right? You could. Lord just means sir, but that's what you're choosing. That is part of marriage. It's a good part of marriage, by submitting to their husbands. And are you her children? You're like Sarah if you do good and you don't fear anything that's frightening. Proverbs 21:19 says, it is better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman. Oh. Proverbs 27:15 and 16. A continual dripping on a rainy day and a quarrelsome wife are alike. To restrain her is to restrain the wind, or to grasp oil in one's right hand. Both those analogies basically mean you can't control her, okay? It's not good. So we don't want to be that. And then lastly, for the ladies, are you preparing to make a home for your family? Not just a house, right, but a home. 2 passages. I could have given more, but Titus 2 talks about younger women learning to love their husbands and their children. right? Are you learning from anybody how to love a husband or children? That's why it's really good that in the bridge, you've got like people who are a little bit older than you, some who are parents, right? Some who are newlyweds, right? It's really cool in the bridge. You get to experience all that, right? Well, learn from them. Ask them questions. It's not stupid. It's not dumb to ask them a question, right? They probably love to talk to you about it. And then Proverbs 31, yeah, she is not afraid of snow for her household. For all her household are clothed in scarlet. Like she's ready because she's working hard to prepare a home for her family. Okay, lastly, part 4. And then, wow, yeah. Am I going too long? When is this supposed to be over, Nathan? All right, never. Page 8 of your worksheet. I would like to offer you a suggestion that there are, in general, 4 steps towards marriage. Okay? You can experience them at different speeds, but basically, most people, before they get married, they go through these 4 steps. This is really what you came for, okay? I loaded the boring stuff at the beginning, and it just keeps getting more unique, right? Okay, what am I talking about? Well, common labels for this is, we're talking, we're going on dates, right? What's the commitment level at this stage, right? There's no commitment. Right? So the first step of dating is like, it's just talking. Maybe going on a date, which is not a crime, okay? Right? All right? We're not in True North anymore, right? Although I know I could just like carve out like right here that we are like pretty much, like, sorry, we've been going for an hour, but like, do you see this? What's going on right here? Do you see? Boy, 3 girls, yeah, sorry, you guys are brave, but like, oh, yeah, then you guys, right? That's really cool. But, like, we are very segregated, right? Not even on MLK weekend. We're so segregated. Like, I don't know why. I don't know. You guys didn't get the memo, right? Like, you don't even have to be that way. You could just talk to each other. It'd be so cool. So, what we're talking about, dating. That was a break, right? Now we're back. So, they're dating, they're talking, they're this is, what some people call the talking phase, right? I don't know necessarily like that label, but there's no commitment at this point. So you can date a lot of people, but not so in this way. So we'll talk about it. Questions you should ask yourself at this point when you're just starting, when you're just thinking about a relationship, right? Do I like this person, or do I just want to be in a relationship, and that's why I like this person? And you might say that's a stupid question, John. It's not a stupid question. I think this question could save a lot of potential problems. I just really want a boyfriend. I just really want a girlfriend. It's like, but do you like them? I don't know, right? Okay, so like, these are good questions to ask before you take things too deep, before you go too serious with somebody. Ask this question. Because, who doesn't want to be in a relationship, right? Unless you're like, like one of the wolf characters on Instagram. That's like, what are those people called? The alpha male, yeah. What are they called? Lone wolves, right? If you're a lone wolf, right? Like, then you don't want to be in a relationship. But most people want to be in relationships, right? So I get it. But okay, before we're like, oh yeah, I'm going to date this person, pause. Do you like them? Or you just want to date, right? If it's just, I just want to date, well then maybe keep it super casual, right? That's okay. You can want to date, but keep it at a casual level. Another question, am I actually attracted to this person, right? Or C question 1, do I just want to have a relationship? Like, I don't really like how they smell, but whatever, right? I don't really like how they look. He's not really like, I don't really like him. Then what are we doing, right? Like, then keep it casual. Please keep it casual. Don't take it too far. Okay, another question. What do godly people think of this person? Oh, that's a good question, right? Like, are they respected by other godly people? Are they frowned upon? Is it like, I'm afraid to even tell my small group about this guy because, they wouldn't think he's godly, right? Oh, well, that's a good mental note, right, before we take things too seriously, right? Another question, what do godly people think of me dating right now, right? If I even, talk to a small group leader, if I talk to my parents, if you got a good relationship with them, right? Those are just 4 questions at the beginning, just when you're getting to know somebody, okay? So we're not even into a full-on relationship at this point. Do I like them? Am I actually attracted to them? What do godly people think of this person? What do godly people think of me dating right now? Okay. And those are good questions before you take it further. You can talk to people and not have all these questions answered. These are just questions to ask while you're talking to somebody. Just to be clear, these are not prerequisites to talking, okay? These are like questions you should be asking while you're talking. Two groups I think you should bring in at this point when you're talking. Some godly mentors. Some people that aren't going to go date that person if you don't. Does that make sense? There's a weird incentive structure sometimes, right? And then here's what I'd say. A small number of godly friends. Maybe not the whole world at this point. At some point, we're going to tell the whole world, right? You're going to wear a wedding ring. And you better tell the whole stinking world you're married, because this is going to be a problem if you act like that's a secret, right? So, but at this point, like, it can kind of be on the DL, for sure, because we're just talking. Some scriptures to direct you. Psalm 37 says, delight yourself in the Lord, love what God loves, and then he'll give you the desires of your heart, because you'll love what he loves. And then commit your way to the Lord, and he will act. Trust in him. Right? Don't just lean on your own understanding in this. Go to God about it. Right? J.C. Ryle, in the book Practical Religion, he says, how many business engagements are made without prayer? How many decisions about where to live are made without prayer? How many marriages are entered into without prayer? It's not good, right? We act, and then we want God to back up what we're doing, right? Maybe ask God first, and then act, as this passage says. Okay, and then just general advice from a pastor, okay? Just some things that I think. So this is the most opinion that I'm going to give you right here, okay? You should get to know more than one person. Opinion, okay? See how you can highlight this in pink or something, or like bracket it and say, this is what Pastor John thinks. You can disregard this part if you really are going to disregard. I don't think you should, but like, hey, this is not scripture. But I do think you should get to know more than one person. I think you should make friends in the bridge of the opposite gender. So when we break in a minute and we go get popcorn, like maybe, I don't know, rearrange your seating a little bit. Maybe, I don't know if I can tell you have to, but that'd be really cool. Okay, number 3, so important, guys. This is my advice. Hey, if you like someone, you should give clear signals of interest, okay? Or gracious signals of disinterest, okay? Let the reader understand. All right. And then honestly evaluate how they act with other people. Don't be like, oh man, I want them so much to be so good. So like, yeah, they're probably good. I hope they're good. Like, no, honest. Be honest. And then don't rush into deeper commitment. And that last part I think might be the most important, because it's really hard to honestly evaluate people once you have gone deep into commitment. Okay? When it's like, this is the person. Right? Okay. Super, super important. Now, that's step 1. Stage 1, phase 1. It has been called many things. Every time I teach it, I change what it's called. But step 1. Step 2. What's happening next? Well, if I'm in a relationship with somebody, step 2, what we tend to call this is like, oh, they're dating. Oh, they're boyfriend and girlfriend. Oh, they're together. We would say, what's the commitment level at this next stage? Well, you're exclusive. Like it's just you two. You're not, I mean, you might let someone third wheel, but like they're not in the relationship, right? Excuse you. Sorry, I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I don't know who sneezed. Oh, sorry. Okay, I won't say. I looked back. I thought it was the boys, and no, it turns out it was the girls. Okay. This is exclusive, but you're not committed. Okay. Once you write not, can you take your pen for me? Your leader's going to love this. Circle the word not. Yeah. Super important. They're my boyfriend or girlfriend. I'm not single anymore. Oh, yes, you are. Oh, yes, you are. You are not taken, okay? So, a word to the wise. Someone else, again, controversy here, right? Someone else is in a dating relationship. Are they single or are they taken? Yeah, you don't want to say it. But they're single. They're single. That doesn't mean your chief aim in the bridge should be to be a homewrecker of, relationships. But hey, it's not a homewrecker. You're not living together, right? So like, it's not a homewrecker. So they're available. Everyone says, oh, there's no available girls in the bridge. I say, well, who's dating other guys, right? If they're not married, if they're not engaged, like I guess they're available, right? I'm not saying you have any success rate with them. You might not, but like they're still, they're not committed, okay? So some questions you should ask yourself at this point when you're dating your boyfriend or girlfriend, which for some people this is a really short stage. They're only in this, like some people even barely go through this because they go from talking to like getting engaged, right? But yeah, most people have this kind of phase of their relationship. Some questions. Do I think this person would make a godly spouse? Right? And these are good questions even for phase 1 too as well. Do we agree about family, career, theological convictions? Please don't bring that up in premarital counseling that you guys disagree on things majorly, right? Because then like you may be giving your ring back, okay? So we'll talk about that in phase 3, but you should be talking about this at this stage. At the we're dating, we really like each other, but we're not married yet, we're not engaged yet, but we're thinking about it. You should hammer out, what do you believe about family? What do you believe about career? What are your expectations of each other? What are your theological convictions? Very important. Another question, if you are in this step for very long at all, you'll probably have some sort of conflict. A good question you should ask is, how do we deal with conflict? How do we work through it? Now, if you have so much conflict, and then you want to say, oh, well, let's just like use all of the marriage stuff that we've heard. We just got to like sit down and really work it through. If you have a ton of conflict at this stage, like, don't marry them. You think it's going to get better? You think it's going to get better? It's not going to get better. It's going to get a whole lot worse. Okay? So, that's important. All right. And then, am I ignoring any red flags? Are there clear things that I know and I just don't want to deal with? And I don't want anybody to like even advise on it because I know everybody will say it's wrong and it's not good. Right? Ask yourself those questions. Okay? Then, some essential people you need. I'm just giving one that's different from the first. A married adult for accountability and guidance. Okay, once you write down the word married, circle the word married. Okay? That is so important. Please find someone who's married. Don't find somebody who's dating, right? Because then you'll have the great shuffle of 2026, right? When I was growing up, I shouldn't even say this. All right, I won't. What I mean is like, don't say, oh, I know who I should get for accountability. The other guy in my small group who's dating some girl. He'll hold me accountable. He might try, but you're both incentivized to lie to each other. Right? What incentive do you have to tell the truth? What incentive, right? So again, to get serious here, okay? If you've got 2 dating couples in the bridge, and like let's say 2 guys, like we're gonna hold each other accountable. Let's just say for the big stuff, for sexual immorality, right? If one dude is committing sexual immorality with this girl, he's never gonna ask that guy on the other side. What incentive does he have to do that? Because that will just expose him. So now he's not even set up for that, so he's probably gonna avoid that. And they both might be committing sexual immorality and acting like they're holding each other accountable when they're both lying to each other. Do you see that? Okay, now, you've got a married person who comes in, they're like, how's it going? How are you guys doing? Are you guys staying pure? How are you like living in your Bible reading? Like, it's a little easier for that person to speak into your life. It's just structurally a little easier. Okay, so I'd encourage you, if you're dating, you should find somebody, even if it's a parent, even if it's, Nathan, not to sign him up for more work, but maybe talk to Nathan, okay? Some scriptures to direct you. Song of Solomon 8:4, really good one. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that you do not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. Be careful. Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's out of the tube, right? You can't put it back in. Once you are in a situation, that's a weird one, but it's like, I always think of that, like, once the toothpaste is out, my daughter will take the toothpaste and she'll squeeze it and then it'll all be gone, and it's like, okay. It's wasted. You can't, it's not like when she spills the goldfish on the ground, we just put them back in the container and feed it to her later, right? It's just like the toothpaste. There's no getting that back, right? That's kind of how it is with love. That's kind of how it is with physical barriers, right? I mean, even think about that, right? You're enamored with each other at this point, right? Things are progressing, right? But no self-control, perhaps, doing whatever you want, feeling maybe guilty or shameful for what you're doing afterwards, right? Okay, if that's the pattern, if that's how it's all just going, at that point, neither one of you are exercising self-control. And at that point, right, two single people. How many people are there that at that point, it rightfully, in God's eyes, is right to engage like in anything sexual with, right? The answer is 0 at that point, right? Then we get married. How many? 1. Okay, now go back to single. How many people are out of bounds sexually? All. You get married. How many are out of bounds? All minus 1. Okay? If you're not gaining the self-control while not married, I don't know why you think you'll have the self-control when you're married, not to be with someone who you're not committed to. Do you see how that works? Like, it's more common maybe than you think. But don't stir up love until it's time. Super important. Proverbs 6 says, can a man carry fire close to his chest and his clothes not be burned? Can you walk on hot coals and not be scorched? Well, probably not. So be careful. Be super careful at this point. So advice from me, take it or leave it, but I think it's good advice. 6 things here. Date out in the open. Let's not have secret relationships at this stage, right? You're kind of owning it at that point, right? Spend more time in public places, right? I know that there's an element in all relationship where intimacy requires privacy, okay? That is just a general truth, even in your relationships, like friendships. You're not going to talk about everything in front of everybody, so all intimacy in relationships requires a level of privacy, but I would encourage you, like, you can have private conversations with a bunch of strangers around you that don't know you, right? You ever been in In-N-Out Burger? Yeah. The lights are really bright in there, okay? In-N-Out Burger is better than your car in the In-N-Out Burger parking lot, okay? To have good quality time conversations. You could have them in both places. One of those is safer and better than the other. In the same way, make it difficult to commit sexual immorality. And be quick to confess your sin to accountability. Right? You want to get better, right? And then don't get married in your mind, right? Don't you pick out the color of the sheets. Don't pick out, the dining room table at this point. Just chill out. That's my last one. Just chill out. That's like the best one, if you understand, right? Like at that point, if you're just chill. Okay. Step 3 and 4. A little less exciting, but a little quicker. We'll finish with this. The common label here is that you're engaged to be married. Right? That's what we're talking about at this stage. We're engaged. We're going to get married. We're getting married soon. We're getting married in 6 months. We're getting married in 3 months. Right? Okay, cool. That's a different step in this process. What's the commitment level here? You're going to expect, we're committed for life. No, you're not. Okay? Not to throw cold water on your engagement, but you are more committed, but you can still break up. Here's what I can tell you. I learned very early in doing like premarital counseling and stuff. I think my first 3 premarital counselings, 2 of them broke up in the counseling. Like after they already, did the engagement and the pictures and the Instagram and the all that. They didn't work out. And you can blame me for that, okay? You shouldn't. I just think of one, simple. Yeah. What I noticed about the couples that broke up was like it was always the girl. I think. It was mostly always the girl. But it was like she never stopped and considered like, man, do I even want this? Like phase 1, question 1 type stuff, right? I remember one time on the phone, getting another counselor, so it was me and another lady from the church, and, girl was going to get married, and it's like, okay, why? I got to ask this, why did you say yes? Like, let's get back to that. Like, I don't know, because he asked, because the ring was there, and because someone was taking a photo, and because I knew what it meant. And so I said yes. I said, okay, well, you don't have to. Right? I even think of one situation where I had parents of the people who broke up come thank me years later for them breaking up. So you're not married yet. You're still single, okay? Now, I would not advise you to go try to break up an engagement because that could get really awkward when they say no. I wouldn't look at the girls who are engaged in the bridge, the boys who are engaged in the bridge and say they're available. I wouldn't try that, but they are. Questions to ask yourself. 2 questions here. Am I confident that this person would actually make a good spouse, not for me, but if they were marrying somebody else? Would I ever advise them to would I want my friend to be attached for life to this person? If the answer is no way, not for envious reasons, take yourself out of it. You're dead. You're in heaven, right? Is it cool for your friend, is this a good man? He's a good man, and he'd be so great. And anybody would be lucky to be married. Okay, good. That's a good sign. Or is it I don't know if I'd really advise anybody to get married to this guy. Probably a bad sign. Inversely, for yourself, how do I become the right kind of husband or wife for this person? So a lot of the things we just gave were general principles that the whole Bible says about just what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a husband or wife? Now it's now I'm trying to make myself tailor-made for that other person. How can I be the right person for them? Right? How can I think of okay, if my wife one day, okay, now I know who I think it's going to be, right? Now I know who he is. Okay, this is cool. Now, what is his temperament? What are her insecurities? How can I be the right person for them? Not just in general, but now for that person. These are good and important questions to ask yourself. Now, other people you need. I'd say 2 in particular. 1, I think you need a pastor for your premarital counseling. You should try to do premarital counseling. Don't be scared of the fact that people break up in premarital counseling. Say, that's why I'm not going to get premarital counseling. Then I'm already say, hey, maybe red flag. If you don't think this relationship can survive, Pastor Luke is asking you some questions. Although, there's a chance that you won't survive that. But, you'll survive. Pastor Mark, totally will survive that. Or, Pastor Roy, maybe not. I don't know his record. I know, yeah, a pastor. And then I'd say your parents. And everybody wants to skip their parents, right? No, I'm leaving and cleaving. Yeah, you haven't left yet, right? Even if you have left physically and you live at college or somewhere else, your parents care so deeply about who you're going to get married to. I'll tell you this in particular. If you are a girl and you have a mom who cares about you, you know what she's going to care about? That big party you're going to throw. And she's going to have expectations and things that she wants. You should say, okay, awesome, okay. I thought, no, my wedding's supposed to be about me. Hey, newsflash, no, your life's not about you anymore. So maybe you should be okay with your, the idea is it's my birthday party, right? I'm going to choose the way, I'm going to choose all of it. Maybe your mom's going to have a say. And it'd be better for you to just be cool, whatever, all right. Just let it roll off your back. I've seen a lot of controversy in premarital counseling about we don't like what our parents are saying, right? And then sometimes, as the pastor, it's okay, I'd love to talk to them, especially if they're in the church. And then I hear what they're saying and the parents are totally right. Most of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the times the parents are asking for reasonable things, and it's your job as a child to honor your parents, even if that's in the wedding planning process, okay? Some scriptures to direct you. Get married if you need to, 1 Corinthians 7, and it's about leaving and cleaving, making a new family, okay? So, some advice for you. Be willing to break up if your counselor advises it. In fact, part of the church process, and it historically has been that the leaders or the pastors have some kind of thumbs up or thumbs down in your relationship, just like your parents do. They have a thumbs up or thumbs down power, right? I know not in every situation, there's exceptions, but the general rule is they're usually part of the thumbs up, thumbs down process. If I do premarital counseling with somebody, part of meeting 1 is, hey, if I say that you shouldn't get married, I won't marry you, right? You'll have to go to somebody else, right? So And all the pastors of our church would say that. Any good pastor who cares should say that. But and then get married as soon as you're ready. Don't be engaged for 3 years. That's not an engagement, right? That's not. I mean, it's barely an engagement. No offense if you've been engaged for 3. I don't know your lives, but I wouldn't advise being engaged for 3 years. You should get engaged, and you know what you should do the next week? Okay, when's this wedding going to be? Right? Get it on the calendar. Right? If you really want a controlling husband, like I was, I actually picked the wedding date before I proposed to her, but that's a different story. Maybe that's a Q&A conversation. All right, step 4, they're married. Oh, so now we're already married. Yep, but romance is still involved, dating is still involved. What's the commitment? Well, you're committed for life now. The question you should be asking at phase 4, step 4 is, am I honoring God by the way I'm treating my husband and my wife? Married, committed for life. Am I honoring God by the way I treat my husband/wife? You don't have to write both. Just pick the one that applies to you because you don't have to honor both. Okay. Also, essential people you need at this point, essential people you need. No, I won't need anybody because I'm married. I'll just with just us, man. Deserted island. We don't need anybody, right? No. Do you know that you need people when you get married? You really need people. Married people. What am I going to say? Who are the people they need when they get married? You need a biblical church family. You need a church family. Oh, you think how long would you be cool and everything be good, just the two of you by yourself, right? I'd give it 6 months. So you can go on a 6-month honeymoon. I just gave you permission for that. If you can afford it, cool. That would be awesome. I mean, imagine that, 6 months. Crazy. Just traveling. If you're super rich and nothing matters for you that, you should totally do that. But then you need to get back to church pretty soon after, right? You need your church family. You need pastors. You need, oh man, you should be in some kind of small group where there's men and there's women, and then you get to know other couples, and then you all start having babies, and then you need each other all the time. If you knew how much me and my wife need the other people of this church, we could not live. We could not do anything without this church. We need this church to survive, right? I got 4 kids, right? So I was I need the church. Some scriptures to direct you here. We already looked at those. One last thing to write down. Never stop loving and pursuing your spouse. Because it's not the finish line, right? So I remember this was so clear in my mind after I got married, and it was not very clear before that. I always viewed the wedding as the finish line. You know what I mean? It's okay, I finally got to the wedding. I finally got to the finish line. We're married. And then you realize when you cross that finish line, it's actually the starting line. And you're whoa, now it's going to be until one of us dies. Cool. That's exciting. So if you're excited, yeah, my wife should say woo. That's so good. All right.